So, welcome back. We have been gone for a few weeks, and we're picking up not where we left off. We're going to follow the calendar. And so now, for those of you following us on the internet, we're now in volume 2 of this wonderful series, A Year of the Lord, Liturgical Bible Studies. And we're going to talk about the first Sunday in December, which actually this year was not the first Sunday in December. Because the first Sunday in December this year was December 1st, and that just gives us too many Sundays. So what we're talking about tonight is basically this coming Sunday, which this year is December 8th. And it is the 10th Sunday of Luke. And the feature for that particular day is the healing of the crippled woman. And so it's a beautiful message that I think is going to be nice to talk about. So who wants to begin here at the bottom of page 31 in our study guide? The crippled woman. You all have your Bibles, right? So get to Luke chapter 13, verses 10 through 17. We're going to be referencing that here in a little bit.
We're going to read from this.
Yeah, go ahead and read from. Don't fold, you're going to get lost. Don't fold it, you're going to get lost, because it opens up like this.
Oh, okay.
All right, bottom of the page. Ready to get home? Let's.
The first Sunday of December is usually the 10th Sunday of Luke. The designated gospel lesson is Luke 13, 10, 17, pages 196-97. Jesus' healing of a crippled woman. However, whenever 4 December Sundays precede Christmas instead of the usual 3, the first Sunday of December may be the 14th Sunday of Luke, 18, verses 35 through 43.
Which it was this year, the healing of the blind beggar. That's what it was last Sunday, December 1st.
Or the healing of the blind beggar, or the 13th Sunday of Matthew, 21, 33, 42.
Don't worry about those.
The parable of the tenants in the vineyard, or even the 16th Sunday of Matthew, the parable of the talents, all of which usually occur at other times during the fall and winter season.
Okay, so just to let you know, gentlemen, in the fall, if you remember way back to September, the first Sunday of Luke is the Sunday after the Holy Cross. Second Sunday, third Sunday, etc. Well, depending on when Holy Cross falls, and depending on how many Sundays are in December before Christmas, some of the readings we kind of skip around a little bit so we can catch up and be at the right place for Christmas. So that's what it's trying to describe here. For example, last Sunday, December 1st, we did the reading of the 14th Sunday of Luke. But the 3 Sundays before Christmas is always the 10th Sunday of Luke. So a few weeks ago we skipped the 10th Sunday, and now we're going back to it so we can line up in time for Christmas. That's what it's telling you there. So, but if you have the church calendar, that's easy to follow because it shows you what readings are which Sundays. But that's just so you know how that falls.
That's the calendar that we get first of the year.
Yeah, the calendar you get the first of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been noticing those things on.
All right, so Father Ted asks us a question. How do you feel when you see a person with a conspicuous handicap, a scar, or a deformity? How do you think that such a person himself or herself feels? So that's an interesting statement. So here we have, this coming Sunday, we're going to read the gospel of the healing of the crippled woman. Now here this woman is bent over, right? She can't stand up. So Father Ted immediately says, what do you think when you see people like that? We've all seen people like that, right? What comes across your mind when you see somebody like that?
God have mercy on them.
Okay?
That's I say that to myself.
Sure, of course. That becomes a prayer at that point.
And if I see him do something that it's hard for him to do, I'll try to help
Okay.
him out. That's me, you know. I don't know whether any other people do that or not. I don't know.
And what do you think they think about themselves? Did you ever imagine what they must think about themselves?
Well,
Now, we're not talking about just, a little limp. We're talking about a severe disability.
If it's something the way I've noticed it is, if it's something that has happened to the people after they was normal,
Yeah.
you see, then it's rougher on them than it is for somebody was born that way.
And do you think they feel it like that, you think?
Yeah, I know they do, because they can tell you that. Because they'll tell you story after story after story of about, before this happened to me, I was doing this, blah, 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 all of that stuff behind them. You know, and the stuff before in front of them is nothing to what they were doing themselves, you know, back in those days. They're completely away from it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're doing this kind of work now and all of this stuff, and then boom, you get hurt, and you can't do it anymore. You're just sorry all the time about that you can't do what you used to.
So you think they have almost like a constant, I don't want to say pity, but they're almost like a depression, you think, at times? That's possible.
Depression.
Well, I think, I feel sorry for them in the sense that.
No, that's you feel that. We're talking about what they
Well, no,
feel.
both ways we're talking
Well,
about.
and I feel sorry for them because they are not capable or able to do what physically
What they used to do.
non-handicapped is. However, by the same token, it depends on, I feel like, how they've been treated at home or what, or are they Christians or what, and have they learned to accept, well, this is the way it's going to be, and they themselves have adapted to it.
Now, that's presuming that their disability or something came to them later.
Yeah.
Of course, if they're born that way, they might think a little
It's
differently.
normal, it's normal.
Because for them, they've never known life any
That's
other
right.
way,
Yeah.
right? So what we're going to see tonight is how Christ interacts with them.
See, because the reason I say this, Father, is that my grandmother's sister, when she was born bent over, you know, like this. She never straightened up. When she was a little baby, she was like this.
Yeah.
And when she was 75, 80 years old, when she was moving around, she'd move it.
So I bet every time she heard this reading, she felt for this woman.
Well, if she heard it, I don't
Yeah.
know. But I know she was aware of that kind of stuff.
So let's follow here what Father Ted wants us to think about. He says here, Jesus often met with people who had various physical handicaps. I'm on page 32 there. You see it right there in the middle?
I'm reading.
There was the blind beggar on the road to Jericho, the paralyzed man who was carried by his 4 friends to Jesus, the man with the paralyzed hand, and others. In ancient times, it was thought that some physical handicaps were the result of demonic possession. Jesus did not treat people, though, with disabilities any differently from anyone else. He loved them as he did everyone else. He approached them not as disabled persons. I love the way Father Ted puts this here. He approached them not as disabled persons, but with persons with a disability.
Yeah, that's what he.
And
that's
that makes
the
a
way you
difference
should-
because
yeah.
they're real,
That's-
genuine people.
That's right.
You know, their personhood is not at all affected by their handicap.
The handicap, yeah, that's right.
So let's read in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 13, verses 10 through 17, and let's just hear this story, and then Father Ted wants to ask us a few questions. You're there? Page 1394 in the Bible.
Yeah, yeah.
You got it there, Salim?
Yeah.
Verse
I think
10.
that's what I'm sitting
Verse
on.
10.
There it is, verse 10, right there.
Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And behold, there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bent over, and could in no way raise herself up. But when Jesus saw her, he called her to him and said to her, Woman, you are loosed from your infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight, and glorified God. But the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, and he said to the crowd, There are 6 days on which men ought to work. Therefore come and be healed on them, and not on the Sabbath day. The Lord then answered him and said, Hypocrite, does not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his ox or donkey from the stall and lead it away to water it? So ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound, think of it, for 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath? And when he said these things, all his adversaries were put to shame, and all the multitude rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by him. So here we see Christ interacting now with this woman, who society didn't even give the time of day on the Sabbath, right? As if she was not even there, in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, that reminds me of a say that people used to say. If the ox gets in the ditch, take it out or help it out, you see. So that's what he's saying right here. If somebody gets hurt, you go help them.
Well, he's making a bigger point than that.
That's why I know this is God, you know.
No, but his point is not just helping them out. His point is,
bringing them together.
if you're willing to help your animals on the Sabbath, why you're not willing to help your fellow human beings on the Sabbath?
That's exactly.
That's the point he's making. Not just helping in general. They would have been willing to help this woman on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't touch her on a Saturday. And he's saying, shame on you. You'll help your donkey, but you won't help this woman just because it's a Saturday. So let's just kind of pull this apart so we understand all the different pieces of it. When and where did Jesus meet the crippled woman? So where was he?
He was visiting, wasn't he?
No, he was in the synagogue.
Yeah.
And what is the synagogue?
The church.
No, it wasn't the church. Now keep in mind, there was the temple and there was the synagogue, two different places. The temple is where they had their prayers, but they also made their offerings to God. They burnt the incense, they made their bread offerings, they made their wine offerings, all that kind of thing. In the synagogue, they made no offerings. It was just prayer and hymns and
Right.
Bible study,
Yeah.
basically. Okay, just so you know the difference between the two. So he was at one of the synagogues. Okay? And it was the Sabbath. So it was the day that all the Jews would gather. Remember, no work was permitted,
Yeah, that's true.
right? They did everything the day before to get ready. They cooked the day before. As a matter of fact, the name for Friday, Paraskevi, is the day of preparation. To get everything ready, because on the Sabbath there was no work. So they took this no work very seriously. So here's Jesus now. He's in the synagogue and they're praying and they're probably listening to the scriptures and so. And one of the rabbis is probably teaching. And here Jesus goes and he heals this woman. They're on the Sabbath in the synagogue, almost like a double affront to their tradition. What they had thought was their tradition.
They're saying, why should you be doing that stuff here in the church on this day?
Right, exactly.
See, that's the way
exactly.
that's the,
So what was the woman's disability? What was her handicap? Go to verse 11. And behold, there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bent over and could in no way raise herself up. So she was bent
She was
over
bent
like
over,
this
yeah, that's
for
right.
18 years.
yeah.
Okay, it doesn't say how old she was, but for 18 years she was bent over. Okay. Jesus did two things to heal her. What two things did he do?
He
Verse
hands on
verse
her.
12 and 13.
He laid his hands on her.
All right, he laid his hands on her, but before he laid his hands on her, what else did he do? The first thing he did,
He called her and you were loosed.
he called her to him. Right? He calls us to him all the time. Now, remember what I said on Sunday in my sermon? So many times Jesus is calling us and we're not listening. And we're not responding and we're not paying attention. Mostly because we're too busy with our own agenda.
Yeah.
God give me this, God give me this, God give me that, right? So Jesus calls her to him. That's the exact word here, he said. When Jesus saw her, he called her to
Woman.
him and said to her, "Woman, you are loosed from your infirmity." So, in order, now it says, then he laid his hands on her.
That's right.
So, could she have been healed if she didn't come to Jesus?
Yeah, I think you could have if you
No.
wanted to.
No, she wouldn't.
In this example, no.
No.
Oh, well, I see. I need this example. Okay.
we're just, I mean, within this context, obviously there are other stories where Jesus heals only with a word. In this example, he's healing with his physical touch. And if she had ignored his call,
He wouldn't have touched you.
exactly.
And she wouldn't have got cured.
So we need to stick that in our heads.
Well, this doesn't say that she even asked to be healed
Nope.
or anything.
Nope, doesn't
He
at
just
all.
picked her out and
That's right. So here he is. That's the perfect imagery. We're in the synagogue. The prayers are going on. He sees the woman over there. He says, "You come to me." And she had to respond. If she didn't respond, she wouldn't have been healed. So she takes a little bit of risk. She gets a little vulnerable because she knows, now wait a minute now, this is the synagogue, it's the Sabbath, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. What's going on here? But Jesus called me, so I have to go.
but she didn't know that was Jesus, did she?
Yeah, she knew he was Jesus. Yeah, he had done miracles by now. He had done this, but he
That's
had
the
done this
reason she
already.
was there, because he was supposed to be there too, right?
Doesn't say that
And
here.
It doesn't say that, but we
It was-
look at it that way.
It was the Sabbath. She was where she was
That's
supposed to
right.
be on the Sabbath, the
That's
synagogue.
right. And he was there too.
Okay, so she's going within the tradition.
That's right.
But the point that I want to make here is that when Jesus calls us, we have to answer. We can't just sit back and say, "Oh, I
Or
hear
walk
you."
away.
You know,
That's right.
we have to respond to his call. If we don't respond to his call, if she didn't respond to his call, she'd still be bent over.
That's true.
And then he was able to lay his hands on her, and he said, "Woman, you're loosed from your infirmity." Right? Very important to keep in mind. Why was the synagogue official angry? Verse 14. But the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation. Why?
It healed on the Sabbath day.
He had healed on the Sabbath day. And that's what throws Jesus now into this dialogue, right? What are you talking about? Would you not help
Yeah, help somebody.
a human being? You're going to help your own animals, right? So this kind of throws that in. Tell me, what was this woman's reaction? She's now healed. Verse 13. What was her reaction? Celine? Verse 13. Look at verse 13.
She stood up straight.
But what was her reaction? That was the physical thing, right?
Glorified God.
And she glorified God,
That's what she did.
right?
Yeah. Because what do we do when somebody does something for us? What we're supposed to do, or at least that's the way I understand it, if somebody sees me and I need some help, and then they come give you help, you're supposed to thank them, and say, "God bless you for what you've done."
Right, but she immediately glorified God. So she
That's
made the
right.
connection
That's
now.
right.
She made the divine connection between Jesus as the man and Jesus as God. And
That's
she
right.
worshiped God and she glorified
That's
God.
exactly right.
So she made the connection that it was because of God's power that she was healed. Okay? And what was the people's reaction?
They said, "What's the matter with you?"
Verse 17.
Yeah.
Verse 17. And when he had said these things,
They rejoiced.
there's two responses here. And when he had said these things, all his adversaries were put to shame,
Yeah.
and the multitude rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by him. So we have the crowd rejoicing,
Yeah, the majority of them.
but we have the elite pouting. I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe he's doing this, right?
Isn't that norm?
Doesn't that happen today?
Yes, every day it happens like that.
Right.
When you have a group of people together.
Right? I mean, think about that. Think about in our own lives, how many times that God has done amazing things, and the crowd over here, maybe don't make it so local, but think of the global church, and the crowd over here is praising God, how wonderful, look what God has done for us, how blessed we are, how many things, and then what's happening to the elite few over here?
He said, man, we need this and we need that.
And why are they moping around?
Because it happened to them.
Because it didn't happen to them. In other words, they're so selfish that the attention is given to somebody besides themselves.
They can't comprehend it because he just come
Right.
out, you know.
Because they would have been perfectly happy trying to heal this woman on a Tuesday, but they wanted the attention. You see, and they just can't get past that. They
Got
can't
plenty
get.
of that today.
We got tons of it today. Tons of it today.
That's true.
We got plenty of it today.
All right. So Father Ted has a few questions here. I'm on page 33 on the handout. It says here, question number 2: how can we today treat persons with handicaps and help them not only be relaxed about themselves but also useful? That's a big thing, you know, with people who have disabilities, feeling useful. Because sometimes people are always trying to do something for the other person. And so they almost feel helpless because no one ever lets them do anything. Especially if they've been injured and they used to be able to do something, they can't do something. So what are some of the things that we can do to be more like Christ for these people and less like these Pharisees and the scribes and the hypocrites who couldn't have compassion on this woman? What are some of the things that we can do?
We can go to them and ask them, well, do you need to get this? You know, if whatever's happening around you, or around them, and around yourself, and you see that they can't do it, so you go ask them, can I give you this, which do you want? You want this?
Sometimes it's the reverse. They don't want to be babies.
No, it's
Well, that's what I'm saying, exactly. How do you help them feel useful?
You don't go talk to them and whatnot, and then maybe in the conversation, but don't make them feel like
if they can't get
that
up.
they are ending because a lot of them don't want to be pitted.
You
Well,
mean
it's-
they can't get up and there's nobody around them here? Now, if their relatives is around them, you're not going to go there and ask them that. But if they're by themselves sitting there, you're going to ask them those
Yeah.
things.
Well, I think
You see?
what,
That's what you have. That's the way I understand.
no,
it.
you're both right. But I think what I think Pauline is trying to get at is, how do you treat them as if they're a normal human being? In other words, the society spends so much time dwelling upon their disability that they always feel there's a spotlight on them.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the cripple.
No, not me. I
And
can't
so,
like that.
so the question is, how can we treat these people? And we hear this very often. People say, "I just want to be treated like a regular human
right.
being."
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So there's got to be some kind of difference between helping them and assuming they can't do something. And
That's
so,
why I said, when you go to talk to them and then in a subtle sort of way, offer,
Right.
some help or something. Don't go right away and say, can I help you? Can you do this and that? Because they don't want to be pitted.
yeah,
They don't want to be pitted.
they want to
They
be
wanna
treated
be
like a
helped,
normal human being.
But they don't want to be pitted.
Right.
Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
That's not only to people who are sick.
That's right. I know.
That's even to, all right, let's take me for instance. I'm healthy and everything. But I don't want to be, because I'm elderly and old, that think that I can't do anything. And yet, sometimes I get that reaction. When you're out or whatever, and they know how old you are and this and that. I can do for myself. Don't come help me because I'm
All right.
old lady.
All right, from now on, you're opening the door for me.
That's right. That's right. No, but that's just being a gentleman. Because you do that for the well people too.
I gotta tell you a
You
true
see what
story.
I'm trying to get at?
I got this a funny story. Speaking about opening the door for somebody, when I was in college, I had a very dear friend, and we would do different, we'd hang out together, we'd study together, whatever. Well, I was going with her one time, and I went to go open the door for her. She looked at me with this nasty look on her face.
I gotta put
She
it on
says,
myself.
here's the best part. She says to me,
That's
she says, oh, her name was Samantha. very dear friend of mine.
Oh,
And she said, I will only walk through that door if you're opening it, not because I'm a woman, but because I'm a human being.
yeah, that's right.
That's right. I mean,
Because she didn't want me opening the door just because she was a woman. She just want, it's the same kind of thing. You don't want to be helped just because you're an elderly woman.
that's right.
You want to be treated like a regular human being. What you can do for yourself, you want to do for yourself. It makes total sense.
He must have been one of those women's liberation type.
Well,
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 asked me, yes, so she told
this was back in the early '90s, and
But they
so.
were still doing that.
But
what they
we were
told
good
me,
friends.
Father.
We were good friends. We studied together, but she was an
Comes back
independent.
just like this.
We'll say she was an independent woman. She wouldn't walk through. She would not walk through that door if it's because she was a woman that I was. Anyway,
Well, just
so let's.
there could be, all right, let's say for instance, we've eaten here, whatnot, and you'll get up, clean up and whatnot. No, leave it alone, I'll do that. I mean,
Get a meal.
Well,
I'm not helpless.
no, that's the truth. All right,
What you was talking
so
about
from now on, Pauline is cleaning all the tables for
That's
everybody
right.
else. From now on, she's gonna clean the tables. All right,
Unless
so
I
let's.
walk through the door first.
You want to leave a tip on the table.
Really, I
Let's
mean,
turn to page 34.
Back to that other, is when I went and started to open the door for the girl, she says, I got two hands, I can open the door
Yeah.
myself.
My mama taught me you open the door for people. That's all. That's what she did. All right, so
Anyway.
there's a meditation. We're going to move on to talk about some of the saints in December. But before we do, let's just read Father Ted's meditation on page 34. Can you read that, Pauline?
On page 34, reading meditation.
The meditation. Yeah.
Just flip it over.
Well, I can't, let me see, make sure, okay, 'cause it's.
We are easily shocked by any good work which is not according to the rules. Church people are especially prone to the temptation to
Denigrate.
and condemn all that is not of their orthodoxy. Let this gospel about the crippled woman and the synagogue official teach us, therefore, to become humble enough, amenable enough to all light from above, to admit with joy and gratitude the good that can be done through other channels than those which, rightly or wrongly, we consider proper. May God make us able, when faced by any healing on the Sabbath, to feel what the people who surrounded Jesus felt. All the people rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by him.
That's a beautiful reminder. The biggest trap, and this is not just Christians, this is human beings in general. We fall into this trap that if it's not done the way we think it should be done, even if it is excellent and wonderful, we can't acknowledge the good in it. And that's probably the biggest lesson we can learn here, that there is good out there. And this is something, especially in our multicultural world, what we call now the pluralistic society, where we have Christians and Muslims and Jews and atheists
Everybody
and Hindus
together.
and everybody else all mixed in together. And St. Basil teaches us to be the bee, to go and take the good things from everything, because everything that is good comes from God.
That's right.
And let that be a reminder to us that when we see something good, even if it doesn't follow exactly what we think should be done, that it's still a good thing and still has its root in God.
Because we're all after the same.
Absolutely. Because
the
in
same
our
one.
hearts,
Yeah.
God has written his law. And so even atheists and everybody else do good things, and we have to learn to acknowledge those good things. That's a good thing to remind ourselves of. Speaking of doing good things, in December there's some amazing saints that the church is going to remind us of. Probably one of the most popular is St. Nicholas. Right? St. Nicholas is celebrated December 6th. So I'm just going to read this, just listen in for a while, because it's just a nice reminder. When we celebrate the feast of St. Nicholas on December 6th, we know that Christmas is fast approaching. As a matter of fact, in many customs, people will decorate after December 6th. They won't do something before St. Nicholas Day or things like that.
That's what I always, my wife used to do that, and I said, why are you doing it so early,
Well,
She says-
I want you to remember that, because we're going to get back to that decorating too early question in a minute. You might be thinking of the practical preparations that are ahead, and soon you might be putting up a Christmas tree. Have you given much thought to the practice of putting up a tree during the Christmas season? Some Christians, and I know this is true, some Christians, viewing the practice as secular, decide not to put one up in their homes in order to accent the spiritual meaning of Christmas. For example, we just celebrated Thanksgiving last week, and it falls in the middle of fasting. But for many years here in America, at the permission of the Patriarch, Orthodox have stopped fasting for one day to celebrate Thanksgiving, because it is a day dedicated to giving thanks to God. And I meet Orthodox people who refuse to eat turkey because they're fasting, as if their fasting is somehow more important than having a piece of turkey at Thanksgiving. The same thing, I know people who refuse to put up Christmas trees just because that they question whether a Christmas tree is a Christian symbol or not.
Yeah.
Of course, I have no problems with Christmas trees myself. I know some people do, but so anyway, so I know some people don't put them up. The Christmas tradition has often Christianized popular customs and universal symbols, seeking to give them their spiritual meaning. For example, when we just talked about seeing the good in things, there are some customs that are not necessarily Christian, but they're not bad customs.
That's right.
Why not embrace some of the good things? So here we have the tradition of gift giving and things like that. We have the Christmas trees. We have the decorations. All of these things can be very good. I'm now on page 35. As far as the Christmas tree is concerned, an effective way of transforming it into a truly Christian symbol is to hang on it various small icons of the birth of Christ and of the saints whose feasts we celebrate during December. Then the Christmas tree becomes a constant reminder of the rich liturgical banquet that December offers. And he reminds us of some of the saints that are celebrated in December: St. John of Damascus, St. Barbara, St. Savas, St. Nicholas, of course, St. Ambrose, St. Spiridon, St. Eleftherios, St. Daniel the prophet, the holy young men, St. Ignatius, and of course St. Stephen, which is after Christmas. So think about that. We have the Christmas tree, we have our bright little colored this, we have our bright little color that, we have the lights, we have the tinsel, we have the garland. How nice it would be to hang an icon here and there to remind us exactly that we're not just decorating the house for any old reason, but we're decorating it because we're getting ready to celebrate Christmas.
You gotta
So we
go to
did-
my granddaughter's house.
Yeah.
Because she's done exactly what we were talking about right here.
Having icons and stuff on her
Yeah,
tree.
she's got it already up,
Yeah, with icons and stuff too in it?
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
hanging
Well,
on it.
we do put icons and, that sort of thing on the tree. But Father, a lot of it is just custom. Now, I'm thinking back in my early days. We did not have an Orthodox church. We did not have all this learning. My mother came over, I guess, when she was about 20 years of age. And at home in Greece, but I don't think, when she came to America and started putting trees up, we had no teaching or anything
Right.
about all of this. So it became custom with us, and we do it. And I think if we were coming over as of today with the teachings and everything, maybe we wouldn't have gotten used to a Christmas tree and putting gifts
Well,
on the
again,
tree.
nothing's wrong with Christmas tree. Don't misunderstand me.
I understand.
What-
I understand
what I'm
that,
trying to-
but
what I'm
you're
trying to
talking
express-
about I understand what you're talking about, but I'm gonna tell you that's because we didn't know. We didn't know all of this.
I think my point is, and I think part of what Father Ted is trying to help us understand is that the tradition of Christmas decorations today has become that the decorating of the house has become the purpose.
Materialisms.
Rather than
Yeah, I understand.
we're decorating the house for Christmas. I mean, you begin to lose the emphasis when you look around the house and there's not one element of the Christian holiday at all present. You've got the garlands and you've got this and you've got that, but you don't have any presence of Christianity in your decoration. That's what Father Ted is trying to say. There's nothing wrong with Christmas
Oh, I
trees.
understand all that, but I just,
As a matter of fact, I mean, when you can have an entire city tree, and as a matter of fact, they're doing it tonight, the lighting of the Christmas tree downtown. But of course, it's now a holiday tree. It's not a Christmas tree, and there's no Christian symbols. So if you go downtown and there's no Christian symbols, and they call it a holiday tree, and you go home and there's no difference between the secular tree that's decorated and your tree in your house that's decorated, you've lost something there. That's the point he's trying to make here. If you walk into a Christian home during Christmas, and it doesn't look any different than the shopping mall does during Christmas, which is green and red bows and the garland and the this, if you don't realize, am I in a Christian home or just in another store, then you've totally lost the emphasis of decorating for Christmas. That's what he's trying to get us to see. And that's what we see too often, is we see all the amazing decorations with no connection whatsoever to the Christian holiday. Put an icon up for crying out loud. All right, so let's...
Seeing that you're just talking about that, my granddaughter's already put up her tree.
Again, there's nothing wrong with Christmas trees.
I'm saying, she's already got it put up. And she's done exactly what you're talking about, right?
I'm glad to hear that.
She's
I'm
got
glad
the
to hear that.
silver things and all of it.
oh, mine's been put up since
Christmas.
3 years ago.
Well,
For,
you never put yours down. You just hide it behind a wall.
covers it
All
up with
right.
a curtain.
So let's get a little bit into St. Nicholas here and see if he can't inspire us for some things. So St. Nicholas became known for his warm and generous heart, his love for children and the poor, his care for the sick, and his gift giving. A beautiful connection with the miracle of the woman with the crippled woman, isn't it? For many, he was and continues to be a shining symbol of Christ's love and compassion. The hymn of his feast day touches on the spiritual qualities of St. Nicholas. The truth of your deeds has set you before your flock as a standard of faith, an example of meekness, and a teacher of self-control. Thus you acquired greatness through humility and spiritual wealth through poverty. O Father and Hierarch Nicholas, intercede with Christ our God that he may save our souls. That's the hymn of St. Nicholas. So here we are, we're talking about the healing of the woman, the crippled woman. Here we are talking about how we can take care of people and how we can show compassion on people. And lo and behold, we have St. Nicholas, which is, we're talking now 1,600 years. People have seen him as a symbol of compassion and Christ's love and taking care of the poor. So you know his relics are in Italy, is where his actual body is. But there are several churches here in America that have pieces of his bone. The Archdiocese of New York has a fairly sized piece. And St. Nicholas Church in Flushing, New York has a big piece. Let's look at the gospel lesson for that day. Go to page 1375. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verse 17 through 23.
1,375.
75. Yeah.
Go back to 75 instead of 90. So
1375.
that's 88. There's 84.
I'm trying to get to 7.
I know, it's hard because these pages are real thin on these
That's
Bibles.
like that, yeah.
72, 3.
75.
Yeah, I got
And
it
we're on
marked.
verse 20, which is the bottom left of the page. You see it there? It says the Beatitudes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it starts on verse 20. I'm just going to read it for you. Then he lifted up his eyes toward his disciples and said, Blessed are you poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when men hate you, and when they exclude you, and revile you, and cast out your name as evil, for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day, and leap for joy, for indeed your reward is great in heaven. For in like manner their fathers did to the prophets. So that's the reading for the Feast of St. Nicholas. All right, so let's just pull this apart. Why did people come to Jesus on verse 18? As well as those who were tormented by unclean spirits, and they were healed. So,
What are you looking at now?
well, now in the Bible and on the worksheet. So we're going to go back and forth. Page 36 in the worksheet, Salim. So it says here, why did people come to Jesus? Well, they were tormented. They were suffering. And they're suffering from all sorts of different things. And so they wanted to be healed by Jesus. Why did they try and touch him? Verse 19. The whole multitude sought to touch him, for the power went out from him and healed them all. So they're grasping for him now. Please, I'm suffering. Please help me. Please help me. You know, you can imagine Christ now walking through these crowds and they're just reaching for him. Please help me, help me, help me.
And everybody's crowding him like that.
Right. Okay. And what does Jesus call his followers in each of the Beatitudes? What does he say? The first word in each one of these. Starting with the second half of verse 20.
Poor.
No,
Blessed are you.
blessed.
For your
Every single one of these people who is suffering.
That's right.
So he's addressing the people who are in torment. They're really struggling here. And what does he say?
Blessed.
Blessed. Blessed are you poor. Blessed are you hungry. Blessed are those who weep. Those who laugh at you. Blessed, 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 blessed are you. So he says to the poor, what are they going to get? Verse 20. Blessed are you poor, for yours is
The kingdom.
So he's promising people, look, you're poor now,
It's the kingdom of God. Yeah.
but such you'll have the kingdom of God. For the hungry, you're going to be full.
Yeah.
Those of you who are weeping, those of you who are crying, you will have joy, you will find laughter. And he says, what does he say to the persecuted? This is in verse 23. To the persecuted, he says,
The reward is great.
rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for indeed your reward is great in heaven, for in like manner their fathers did to the prophets. Now this is something I want to point out because this is a big confusion with Christians. We as Christians are going to be excluded. People are going to hate us. People are going to revile us. But look what it says in verse 22. Blessed are you when men hate you, when they exclude you and revile you and cast out your name as evil, for the Son of Man's sake. So Christ is making a very important distinction here. There are many reasons to be hated, I suppose. You could be hated by people because you're an evildoer. Christ is not telling those people to rejoice. He's saying, when they hate you and mistreat you because you're a Christian, rejoice.
Amen. That's right.
And that's a big temptation because we as Christians get into this trap. Well, if we are treated poorly, then we're going to be blessed by God. But sometimes we're treated poorly because we're bad people. We're not necessarily treated poorly because we're Christians. So Christ is making that distinction that I think too many people seem to forget.
Yeah.
Right?
They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing for
Right.
him.
So Christ is saying, if the reason people are hating you and treating you poorly is because of Christ, rejoice in that day.
That's exactly.
That's an important distinction to make.
Yeah.
Then who does Jesus warn? Let's go on now, verses 24 through 26. Jesus gives some warnings to people. Who are the people that he warns?
Some of them are the rich.
The rich.
Those who are full.
They're
have
full.
Everything they want. No.
Those who are already full of joy. In other words, those who have all the pleasures now. Jesus warns these people. He says, woe to you! Woe to you! Because you have all these wonderful things now, you're going to lose them all then.
You're not going to have them later.
Now here's an interesting thing. Is Jesus saying, well, take for example verse 25. Woe to you who are full, for you shall hunger. What do you think he's talking about? Is he talking about their bellies?
No.
No.
No, because we're not going to be hungry.
That's right.
We're not going to be physically hungry later. So what's he talking about?
What they are doing or what they're...
They're not being Christians about it. They're not
Well-
following the Christian life.
He's talking about their
How they're
spiritual
doing-
state here.
Yeah.
In other words, woe to you who are rich, for
And how
you
they're
have
handling
received your... In other words, you are... Those of you who are so content now, you think you have everything you want now,
Yeah.
your mind is not realizing that all those things you have now are temporary. So you're having joy in your wealth, you're having joy in your full bellies, you're having joy in being treated wonderfully by all these people, and all of that's going to go away, and you'll end up with none of that stuff.
See, and all of these
But-
people out here, and you're doing nothing for them.
But because you thought that was the important thing, when you lose it all, you're going to be in turmoil. Not because you're going to be physically hungry,
That's right.
but because you will not have realized in enough time that these pleasures of life is not the emphasis of things.
Yeah.
That's what Christ is telling
Temporary
us.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So when he says, you are full for you shall hunger, means your belly might be full now, but later you're going to be craving something more important, and it'll be too late. Crave God now. So go back to verse 21. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be filled. Do you think he's talking about their bellies? No. Blessed are you who hunger for God now, who crave God now, because you shall be filled. You shall be satisfied. That's the difference that Christ is trying to get us to see. He's using the physical ailments of people to draw the attention. Look, go back to this crippled woman in the gospel. She spent 18 years bent over. She probably had grown accustomed to life bent over like your sister, or your aunt, I mean.
Yeah.
So when she is lifted up straight, she says, oh, praise God. Because she was lacking something. So Christ is kind of, he's taking the physical ailments of these people, saying, look, in that same way, your soul is craving something. And if all you can do is fill your belly, you're going to find yourself very hungry later. Give your soul what it needs. And then he says,
And be thankful.
woe to you when all men speak well of you. Oh, look at him, how wonderful he is, how wonderful he is. For so did their fathers to the false prophets. Because what did they do to the real prophets? They killed them. So who are the false prophets? The one who are building up the
So
wealth,
all
the
the
ones
wealth.
who are... Exactly.
Yeah, the wealthy people.
And so God says, woe to you, don't get so carried away here. Right? What does he say? Another place in the gospel? Those of you who do for the praise of men, you have your reward. So he's warning us, don't get so wrapped up in the here in the now, in the joys and the pleasures of this life, that we don't crave God and want him for the next. And so all of that kind of works its way into Christmas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because what has Christmas become?
Materialism.
Materialism. That doesn't even begin to say it.
Yeah.
I mean, Christmas season now is nothing more, as I said, than green and red bows and pretty lights, no reference to God whatsoever, so much so that when we come to the actual day of Christmas, we're too exhausted to celebrate in the proper Christian way, which is to come to church, worship God, receive Holy Communion, and then begin our celebration. So what I want us to do, I want to wrap up, I'm going to turn off the camera in a second, but I want us to dwell on something. Christmas is a time when we should be preparing to receive Christ. If we spend all of the next several weeks surrounding ourselves with the joys and pleasures of life, Christ is warning us that we will be poor, we will be hungry, and we will be in torment. So it's your opportunity to turn the table and to spend the next several weeks in preparation for Christ, hungering for Christ, maybe even fasting, maybe even helping the poor, so you can have a proper outlook on this joyous season. We'll see you next week.